Hi there, welcome back. We are going to share with you a little bit of lesson 9.2 talking about nets. So I am going to keep my video up in there, so it's going to be a little bit of interaction back and forth for you. We are going to talk about nets today. So yeah, our previous lesson was talking about naming the different solids. We saw the difference between the prisms that have the two bases that match and then the rectangles going around the outside compared to things like a cone, which has the single circular base and then it has that piece of wrapping that kind of goes around the outside. We talked about a sphere. We also mentioned the cylinder, which has our two circular bases and then that rectangular piece that wraps around the outside, in addition to what a pyramid would look like. And a pyramid has your single base. It has triangles going around the outside, and they all come to that particular point, which we call a vertex. So our lesson for today starts actually on the page number 4 here. And when we talk about nets are like shape jackets. So a net is flat, which means it is two-dimensional. So we can actually show a net on a regular piece of paper. When we take that net then, because it's flat, it could actually be folded to create for us our 3D solid. So for example, this would be a net. It is flat, it's a piece of paper. And what I can do is I can actually take it, I can fold up the circular part, and I can wrap this around and actually connect these two sides. This is not a great example because you can't see perfectly, but you can actually see that we kind of create a cone here. I could take, for example, this one. Here is my net. So you can see that I have two triangles on there, and then I have these three different rectangles going across. And if I fold up those triangles and hold this flat, and then I connect these together at the top, I actually close this up and I've created a triangular prism. So I can take that flat piece of paper and actually fold it up so that I create that prism then. So when we look at nets, there's a couple different little tricks that we can use to kind of help ourselves out. When we're looking at a net of a prism, we are going to see lots of rectangles. And when we see these lots of rectangles, we're also going to see with it two matching tabs. And if you remember on a prism, the reason that we see the two matching tabs is because we have those two bases that are actually going to matchy-matchy with each other. So those tabs are going to be our bases. So we're going to see the two bases and then lots and lots of rectangles. If we are looking at a pyramid, when we take a look for pyramids, remember they have that one singular base and then they have triangles going all around. So we're going to look for triangles. And when we do that, depending on actually how many sides your base have, the more sides that the base has, the more triangles you're going to have, and it's actually going to start to look like a star. So when we see these, they are going to look like stars for us moving forward, especially if we have a high number of sides to our base. So let's go ahead and actually take a look at a couple nets here, and we're going to see what they form. I'm going to make my picture a little bit smaller here so I'm out of the way. So in this first one, I'm noticing there's a ton of rectangles, and I do notice that there's these two little tabbies that are kind of on the end here. The tabs are squares, but remember, we don't call it a square prism. We are going to still call it a rectangular prism. So I have here for you an example. This is a rectangular prism. The tabs are shifted a tiny little bit, but if you actually take it, we have those four rectangles. And if I fold them up, it creates this. And then I can close up that little tab on the end, which actually closes in the entire net that we have here. So I can do that on both ends. And we actually have a rectangular prism here then, instead of just being able to see the flat net. For the next one, I'm going to try to see if I have an example of this. We have a square, it looks like in the middle here, and then we're surrounded by triangles. So that should give you a hint. It kind of does look a little bit like a star, that this is going to be one of our pyramids. And looking at that base, the base is a square, so we would actually call this then a square pyramid. And if you take a look at the video right here, you do have, for example, this little one. And again, it's kind of hard to hold these and show them up at the same time, but it does fold up to create that square pyramid for you then. Down in the next group of two, this one is made up of all squares. So this is one of our special ones. And this one is, in fact, actually a cube. So the cube would have the 6 sides, and they're all going to be squares. For this next one, I do notice these two little tabbies on the end. They have 5 sides, and I note there's 5 rectangles here. So this is a prism, and the bases are pentagons. So we call this a pentagonal prism for this one. In our next group here, this one on page 5 really looks like a star this time. I'm going to count the bases. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, sides of the bases. The sides are 8, so this would be an octagon for the base. So remember, we put an AL on the end to turn it into an adjective. And with all those stars going around, that signals to me that they're triangles, and it's going to be a pyramid here. This next one, I do see 2 little tabs on the end, and my tabs happen to be triangles, which have 3 sides. Noticing that there's 3 rectangles that are here, this is in fact a triangular prism. And further down your page here, this one's a little bit kind of tricky to see, but this white part right here is supposed to be your base. So if you have on the bottom, and let's see if I have one of these to share with you. I do. This one's a little bit small, but we have in the middle right here, this is going to be our base. And if we take those sides and we fold them up, we actually do have a little pyramid here, and the base is actually a triangle this time. So this is a triangular pyramid. This one here, it is important to note that we do have the little bases that matchy on 2 different sides of the rectangle. If you had 2 on the same side, you're not actually going to even have a net because it's not going to be able to fold up. But with those 2 little sides on either end, you actually do have a prism here, and this would just be a rectangular prism. Heading on over then, the last couple that we have here, here's another one that does look like a star. You have the 6 sides to your base, so we would call that a hexagon. But because it is describing, we're going to call it hexagonal, and this is in fact going to be a pyramid. Our last one here has the circles as the 2 bases, and then we have this rectangular piece that's going to wrap around it. This is in fact going to create for us one of our special ones. It's called a cylinder. So that is it for nets. Nets remember, they are flat. They're 2-dimensional. They fold up to make 3-dimensional objects then. So you'll be able to name and identify them based on that.